Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Deep End. Mike Shope, Adam Krautwurst. Dynasty theme tonight. We're going to talk about tight ends in our continuing series of tiers, look at the Draft Sharks rankings and comment on a few, positions we might, or players at certain ranking positions we might agree or disagree with. Also, before that, a look at the most just sort of popular, people clutch these to their bosoms, Adam, when it comes to dynasty asset. And maybe that should be investigated. Maybe it's not so obvious that that's the right, that's a word you use all the time at your job, apart from these shows, bosoms. We got that in. We got that in very early. If we're talking bosoms, it's 1 minute of the show. It must be the Deep End. Should be fun tonight. Thanks for being with us. Also, some trade targets tonight. What I was thinking about when I, sort of sloppily set that all up was the 2023 draft picks.
Yeah.
For how long, Adam, have we heard dynasty experts talk about how 2023, that's the year you're going to want picks? And we've talked to people individually. Scott Connor comes to mind, just somebody who's very reticent to give up a pick from next year. I don't know, Adam, depending on your team and your league, it might be the right move to dangle those picks. So what's your attitude about that?
Yeah, I like to kind of, depending on what your team structure is and what you're looking to do. I don't value picks as much as I think dynasty owners view things differently. Some dynasty owners like to kind of gobble up all those picks and have those future picks, and that's their strategy. They want to build for the future. Other dynasty owners don't care about them at all. And usually you can tell, like right when you get into a draft, the first thing people are doing is trying to trade off their first round picks for the following year. And then I'm kind of in the middle. Like I like using them to move up and move around in drafts, but I'm not necessarily looking to give them away. But I don't need them at all. As long as I feel good about my team at the current moment. But I do feel like I find like if I have 2023 picks, I feel like I found $100 bill in my pocket, because a lot of times I was, you go through a dynasty roster and you look like, oh, this team looks really good. And you scroll on like, oh, I have 2 2023 firsts. Oh, I feel even better now. So yeah, that's the way I look at it. If you can build yourself a nice team and still have your first round pick next year and maybe grab somebody else's, I think it's a good idea, but I'm not necessarily going crazy just to get them.
Those rankings, every draft changes at least once, from when it starts to be hyped to when we get there, can go either direction. I'm not predicting that 23 won't be great. It's just that can go in different directions. It's hard to know, just like it is in the pros, how guys are going to develop and how they're going to turn out. I feel like, if you have a championship caliber team, you want to do everything you can to augment it and give yourself a better chance of winning. And that's always next year's picks. Like as a rule, it's the first thing you think of is turning the future picks into a starter this year or even a stud. I just think maybe the time to make those offers isn't right now. Get into your season. If you're good already and you're one piece away, go see if you can start 3-0 or 4-1 or something like that. And somebody else is starting 1-4 that might have thought they were good. And that I think can be the time to make that trade.
And that's exactly right. You want to, if I've got them, the picks, I'm holding on to them now and then waiting for the right time in the regular season for, like you said, when that team's crashing and he's like, all right, well, I guess I'll trade for next year. Cause that might even be you, right? So if you trade them now and then you get a couple injuries and your season's shot, now you don't have those first round picks either. So yeah, wait it out. Play the waiting game on those and wait and see how your season turns out, and then make a nice trade.
There are players in every dynasty league that just hold those picks so close. Yeah. And I've been that guy before. It's fun. The draft is the most fun thing of the league, unless you put cashing the winner's check first. Everybody loves the draft. The reason you play dynasty is picks and to have those conversations in February, March, April. And so, there are players in every league who just would be loath to give them up. I mean, I'm thinking of people specifically as I say that. And again, I've been that sort of style, but there's just like everything else in fantasy, there's not one way to do it. And that can kind of define certain players, is to hold on to those picks. So I don't think you want to be one way. I think there are times when, if you're pretty good, you want to go for it. Figure out the money. How much money have I put into this league? How much is it per year? Do I have a chance to win? And then sometimes you have to be willing to push. So even when the draft picks you're holding are for a year that everybody thinks is going to be amazing, it's also like rookies right now too, Adam, right? I mean, it's almost the same thing. If you have maybe mid-tier rookies, or take a guy like Kenneth Walker, who was the second running back picked, very much hyped prospect. People loved him going to the draft for what he was at Michigan State. And now the general attitude seems to be pretty negative, not because of anything he really did, but people talking about the Seahawks. They didn't get Mayfield, if that meant anything. They look like a pretty sad squad. And so you've got Rashad Penny there, who has not been hurt. I know it's not even to camp yet. Walker is somebody in your league could be different on than 2 or 3 months ago. And he's almost like a 2023 draft pick. If you've got him and you want to win, turn him into, I don't know, depending on the format, Tom Brady, if it's a super flex or something. Brady and Rodgers are guys, we'll talk about them later maybe, who, if you have a team that isn't expected to win, what are you doing with them? Especially Brady. So, always be searching. Maybe with those picks, again, the time is not really right now, but you got to be open to moving them.
Yeah, I think it's a bit, or vice versa. Trade, like you said, trade Brady or Rodgers or something of that nature to get a Kenneth Walker. And so, and then hopefully, I mean, Kenneth Walker is a good example of a guy. Probably, I don't know if we're going to talk about him later, but we can talk about him now as a guy that you could buy low, because hopefully after this year, they've got, a new coaching staff, like, Rashad Penny's out of the picture, which could be very, very doable. And then you got, the number one back on a team that's revamped, and they're passing the ball, and they get a whole new coordinator and all that stuff. So, but yeah, you could go either way on that.
All right, let's get to our tiers. We've done quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers already over the last several weeks. Tight ends tonight, and again tonight we'll use our Draft Sharks rankings to look at what the tight end breakdown looks like. Are you calling that up? I think you are, right?
Yeah. Yep. No, I sure am. So yeah, we've got the Draft Sharks website. They do a great job with their dynasty rankings. I don't know why it's not adding to the screen. Here we go. And again, I know every time we go over these, I like to point out they do a really good job with the 3, the 5, and the 10-year fantasy output. And for example, so you'll see in there, like, Travis Kelce's third, but he has the most 1 year projected. So they think, hey, he's going to be the best in this year, but it's going to tail off to a 3. And by the 5th year, he's way down the list. So I know that's pretty much common sense, but at least it gives you kind of a view of this is. These are done by historical production and algorithms based on career arcs and all that type of stuff. So it's not just opinion on these, but yeah. So Mike, who do you got at the top of your tight end tier?
Well, it's got to be Pitts, I think, doesn't it? He's super young. It's pointed out here at Draft Sharks how he's not even 22 yet.
Yeah.
And it's still not a time where you want to be too excited about his team, but there's nothing about the player that you wouldn't love. I mean, last year he still had a usable season without scoring. He had 1 touchdown the whole season. So right. With the age of Kelce, who usually has dominated this category, you can't put Kelce above him. And then Andrews is fairly young too, and that's a little closer. I mean, I think this top 3 at Draft Sharks is just right. I mean, it feels like it's almost going to be like almost unanimous that that's the order. Maybe if anything, you'd put Kelce lower, but I'm sort of buying into the idea that he might not be ready to fall off. I mean, he had a great season again last year. Even if he wasn't tight end 1 for the first time in several years, and the Tyreek Hill trade has everybody sort of psyched up for Kelce. So 1, 2, 3 is right. If you wanted to move Kelsey a spot or two lower, bring up the younger Goddard, Hawkinson, Waller, Kittle, all those guys. I mean, those two last guys are older than the previous two, but I think that is an interesting debate. Pitts at 1 is not close. I mean, he's 4+ years younger than everybody else in those top two groups.
Yeah, Pitts isn't close at all. I completely agree. Pitts is the man right now. And I think he's a guy that you might be able to trade for cheaply. And we talked about this for redraft. I've talked about it with a couple people on Twitter going back and forth. And like right now he's going at the, mid to late second round in these redraft leagues. And if he hits this year, he's especially in these tight end premium leagues. I'm talking FFPCs going, mid second, late second. If he hits, he's going to be a top 3 pick next year. And it doesn't matter this year, right? Because you can't keep him. But in a dynasty league, buy the guy now before he comes untouchable. I mean, we traded up for him in an FFWC dynasty league. And people were like, oh, it's early. I know he's Pitts, but it's early. It's early. Next year, he might be, a locked in top 3 pick. And I think I don't really know what's stopping him other than like, the quarterback position or whatever. But like, it's just a matter of time before he's the tight end 1. And I think it's going to happen. I think it probably could happen this year if Kelsey has a fall off or if Kelsey gets hurt. I think there's going to be too many targets in Kansas City for Kelsey to fall off. But yeah, Pitts is definitely a guy that I would be targeting to try to get in a trade. Don't ask us to trade for him. Okay, because we traded up for him, but
especially in that league after what we did.
Especially in that league.
Now there's absolutely no way we could do it if we wanted to because we were famously moved up.
Right. Well, no one would even dare now that they mocked us openly for it, so they would never even dare.
Right. They can't ask either. We can't do it, and they can't ask.
And they can't ask.
The flags are planted on that one.
Yeah, but yeah, Andrews second, fine, and there's talk about is Lamar going to re-sign there? I don't know if it matters. I mean, having Lamar there would be fine, great. He's great, and it's a nice, safe spot. But like he did even better without Lamar, so I don't know if that necessarily matters. The Kelsey thing to me, I might put Kelsey a tier below Andrews just because of the age. Like if I'm in a win now, like so if it's a startup and I'm like, hey, I'm doing a win now build. Forget even next year or forget 2023. Kelsey's a guy that I would certainly target. But other than that, I think I would pass on him for some of the younger talent that we're going to talk about.
Well, it's really interesting. You mentioned how at Draft Sharks they have that 3, 5, 10 feature, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. You can see it on there. If you're watching us, you can see the 4 different columns: 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year. That's really unique in fantasy to have that function. And so it's smart, but it's also like a great way of simplifying, overall or in general, how good your team is relative to the rest of the league. You can go to Draft Sharks, you sync your team and find that out anyways, just to get their opinion on it. But, 10 years is so far off, but 3, 5 or 1, 3 and 5, no matter what you want. If you want to go to 10 too, you can see how the rankings change. If you click on those columns, you can see how the lists look different. So do I want to try to win this year or in the next 3 or 5, anything like that? And by the way, if you want to sign up while we're talking, you can pause us and get back to us. If you're a Draft Sharks insider, sign up for this year. We'll be here when you get back. Go to draftsharks.com, sign up, become a DS insider. It takes only a few minutes, and you can take advantage of all these cool features. The draft war room as well. If you're doing a startup or any sort of league, sync your league, and then the Draft Sharks app will be right there with you along for your picks. I mean, the one thing that I have the most trouble with in drafts is keeping track of what everybody else is doing. Like I'm not thinking about individual teams as I'm going. I can see how many quarterbacks it's been or how many receivers it's been. But what that app will do for you is, rearrange your rankings pick to pick based on what else is happening. And that's really hard to do just, in your own head, especially if you're having fun at your draft. Right, Adam?
That's right. That's absolutely right. For home leagues, you definitely want to have them do that for you. So,
right.
But yeah, so I just sort of here. Go ahead.
I was just saying, we don't have to go through every guy in so much detail, but I am loving Goddard lately. I think that's just
Yes.
a really exciting opportunity he has. I would also put him above Hawkinson for this year, or even maybe for the next few, because I think that there's a lot of potential with the Eagles. There is too with the Lions, and Hawkinson is a super good player, but Goddard has more of the pass catching, strength to weaknesses. He's more somebody who I think gets down the field and could be a weapon to them. And I want to think the optimistic case is that A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith earn enough respect, command enough respect from defenses outside that frees up Goddard for even more. So I'm high on him this year for sure.
Yeah, I absolutely love Goddard. I love his age. I mean, we've been waiting, right? We've been waiting for this moment for Goddard to be able to kind of break out, get away from Zach Ertz, and be able to do his thing for the Eagles. And so I'd like him for this year. I like him moving forward. So he's definitely a guy that I would be targeting in Dynasty and redraft, but definitely Dynasty. Even if you roll down to his 3 year has him up there, and then his 5 year has him way ahead of even a guy like Kelsey. It's interesting. You look at the Kelsey projections. The 1 year and 3 year are nice, but then the 5 year and 10 year are the same as the 3 year. So they only project him based on historical data to play a maximum of like 3 more years. So where you get a guy like Goddard just going up and up and up. He's only 27, so yeah, Goddard's a guy in this next kind of tier of, Goddard, Hawkinson, Waller, Kittle. Waller's turning 30. He's getting up there. Kittle, also older than Goddard, only by a year, but I feel like he gets banged up a lot more. But yeah, Goddard's a guy in the tier that we really love at Draft Sharks.
In drafts, I also like the tight ends between about 10 and 15. I don't feel as much pressure this year in a redraft or in a tournament to draft one of the top 4 or 5 guys. And Goddard really in those formats is not in the top 5. I mean, he's more like 7 or 8 with Dalton,
Right.
Schultz, and Hawkinson. But you have, and we can see it on the screen here as you put it up, you have Irv Smith, Komet, even Noah Fant on sort of a bereft Seattle team. These guys are all under 25 years old. Freiermuth is another one. Those 4 guys are all under 25. Freiermuth isn't even 24. Yeah. Neither is Komet. Tight ends, everybody knows it. Tight ends need time. So they were not all great prospects, but I think they're all worth a chip, right? And Smith missed a year on top of his being so young. So I have more of him than maybe the other 3 I just mentioned combined, Irv Smith.
Yeah, I like Irv. I really do like Freiermuth. In his rookie year, he had 60 catches, 7 touchdowns with a Big Ben that has just, had an absolutely dead arm. He's a guy I really like. He might not pop this year because we don't know what's going on with the quarterback this year, but he's a guy, they took him high. He's got the draft capital. Iowa, that's like tight end university over there. And he played really well. So I think he's a guy that another one that you want to get this guy before he pops. It might not be this year. It might be next year. But if Trubisky or whatever, if they get some good quarterback play, it could be this year. But I really do like Freiermuth out of that group.
One more name for me would be Evan Engram. And I think there's a little bit of hype on him too, more for this year. I mean, he's almost 28, as you see. But when I look at Jacksonville, I think Kirk has a chance to really produce highly. But Engram is like right there. I mean, of course, ETN. But I think Engram, he's paid, if you want to consider Jacksonville competent enough to sort of analyze it this way. You gave him money, and he's always been a talent. And I could see him, overproducing based on ADP easily. In terms of dynasty, I think tight end is overall more of a win now position. There's so much work on the waiver wire every year, second and third stringers that you end up, stuffing into lineups week to week. And so you'd love to have a Pitts or somebody up top. You don't have to worry about it, but there's so much change at tight end anyway. I mean, I think you can be a little bit more like running back than receiver. You can be a little bit more living in the present at that position. And Engram, he's not past his prime necessarily. Exactly. He's not young either, but new opportunity for him. Talented guy. I think there's some potential there.
Yeah, I love Ingram this year. Anytime I get a chance to talk about Ingram, I do. I was on the GOAT District earlier this week, and we talked about tight ends, and I couldn't talk enough about Ingram. I mean, Peterson loves using the tight end, and they picked him up early in free agency. I think $12 million, and a prove it deal, like 1 year. So I really like that too. Like you said, he's not even 28 yet. So even if you get 3 years out of him, 3 like really good years, I think you won if you took him as tight end 17 in Dynasty. So he's definitely a guy that I'm targeting in that range of players. And then for me, one last guy kind of later on, another guy that I kind of like is Brevin Jordan, a guy that could pop even as soon as this year. He could be the number 2 option in that passing game. Athletic. He did have three touchdowns last year. And but I do think he has a chance to pop, a guy that I'm taking later on in redraft and in Dynasty.
2 more touchdowns than Pitts.
That's
Jordan.
right. That's right.
As a rookie. So Alberto, we have to mention him because we talk about him a lot. Aquabenham. There's the Draft Sharks podcast the other day had a Broncos writer favorably comparing the rookie Dulcich to Alberto. I mean, it's a minor league example, but that for me is an opportunity to see if the market's a little bit softer on Aquabenham, a much better athlete and young too. So he is a very popular gamble, if you want to call him that. I think in dynasty circles and in tournaments. Obviously, the offense looks great, and I'm not shy about picking him either, especially in dynasty with his being so young. So, thumbs up for me.
Yeah, I could see it. I mean, I don't know. I know Dulcich is kind of the hot ticket there now. Let's see what Draft Sharks has Dulcich ranked 29th. And this new regime kind of took him here too. So I think they have high hope. But you know what? We always have. I mean, just look back at the guy underneath him, Harrison Bryant. I mean, this guy's been around for 3 years now, and he was another top tight end pick, and nothing's happened. So that can be the same situation, and then you're really hit big with Albert Owabenham. But I think
Hamler might be more of a threat to him than Dulcich. I mean, I think only so many footballs, right? Denver and 2 running backs, especially one that people are into. So Sutton and Judy. I mean, Hamler's relevant. That'll be interesting. I think that could limit. Anybody could say this. I mean, could limit his upside, but I'm not worried about a rookie tight end who was drafted in the middle of the draft. I mean, maybe was he the 2nd round, Dulcich? Maybe, but
let me look
even if he was, when does a rookie tight end ever sort of move the needle?
No, right, and that's what I kind of found interesting. Doesn't say here, but yeah, it wasn't a 1st round pick for sure.
No,
maybe not even a 2nd, but yeah, I find it interesting always. I think part of the fun of kind of this preseason stuff and the preseason banter is kind of sifting through. And I know you had spoken about wanting to do more of that this year, is kind of focusing on coach speak and sifting through like what these beat writers are saying. Like they had Mike Kliss on the show for the Denver Broncos beat writer, and it's like what is news, what is he reporting, and what is his opinion? So that situation didn't really sound like it was a lot of his opinion. It sounded like a little bit of more reporting. But again, a rookie tight end is just never do anything outside of Kyle Pitts.
Pitts, right? Pick 80, by the way, Dulcich, round 3.
There you go.
All right. So what is this time of year about? Every once in a while or every 45 minutes, you look at your roster and try to see if there's some way you can improve upon it. We talked about next year's picks, which is one strategy, but you and I, Adam, have each picked out 2 or 3 players that we think we would want to be on the hunt for. Let's say you went into your league, you put up the roster grid, you're trying to find, certain guys. You can also look for position imbalances and try to make moves that way. That makes sense. But a couple of guys for each of us that we might want to trade for, depending on the price. That's always the case. How about one for you to start?
Yeah, I was going through kind of some Dynasty ADP and kind of comparing it with the Draft Sharks Dynasty rankings, and And so the first guy that came to mind is a recent guy that's been on my redraft radar. And so DJ Moore is a guy that just, and I, I always kind of like giggled whenever people were like, everyone was on DJ Moore and DJ Moore this and that, and he's going to have that breakout smash season. And he just, and I've never been a DJ Moore guy. Not that I don't like DJ Moore, but just the quarterback situations there and all that type of stuff. But now they got a new coordinator, they got a new quarterback, so I really like DJ Moore in redraft this year. And I think this is the year he's really going to pop and take that next step. And so I'm trying to find guys that are going to pop this year and move up pretty drastically in Dynasty. So, he can't move up a ton because I think he's probably already a top 10 Dynasty receiver, but I feel like he's a guy that can solidify himself. Maybe he's there long-term. Maybe he isn't. But I think Moore is a guy this year that could definitely have that pop this year. He's going, I think, in the third round of redrafts, but Draft Sharks has him as their 8th ranked receiver for Dynasty. And there's just room to grow. He's 25. He's really good. Any improvement in quarterback play could send him to the moon.
He's tough to trade for because what are you giving up? Like if somebody's team is bad, he's young enough where you want to keep him, and Carolina is still in sort of rebuild mode, if you will. So I think he's tough to trade for. Maybe if there's a position discrepancy, you can pull that off, or if somebody just does not like DJ Moore. I think everybody in fantasy is just waiting for the year where the touchdowns bounce from DJ Moore.
Right.
63 career games, 14 touchdowns, never more than 4 in a season. And for as complete a player as he is, and, Carolina is not exactly super loaded with target options. That deserves to turn into like an 8 or 9 for DJ Moore one of these years. There's no real aspect of a wide receiver position that he can't sort of do for you. So hopefully Carolina makes that work. I agree with you. I think, there's tons of potential there, but trading for him, you sort of have to find somebody who's disgruntled, or maybe they have too many Panthers or something. Maybe to make that trade, or the next year's pick. He starts for you. He's 9th in the Draft Sharks rankings, Dynasty.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I feel like looking around the rankings, it's if you had DJ Moore, would you take Tyreek Hill for DJ Moore?
No, because okay. I think this year I have almost a coin flip to do just as well, and I've got a brighter future, I think.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I'm just trying to think, like, you can probably trade a receiver that's in the same range that you think he's just going to leapfrog this year and beyond. So, but I think some people would take that deal, Tyreek for DJ Moore. Yeah. So I think I think if you've got that type of situation, you could do a 1-for-1 and just. Or maybe even get a pick back too, I know we hate fourths and stuff like that, but I just feel like Draft Sharks might be higher on DJ Moore than others, and maybe you can weasel him away from somebody. But who do you got? Who's your guy?
Well, the next guy on that list is one of mine, who is Jaylen Waddle, and here's my logic on that. I think he's only going into his second year, so it's not like the fantasy community is bored with Jaylen Waddle. But Tyreek Hill being there and the questions about Tua, I think sort of what's priced into Waddle. If there's a sort of a lower ceiling this year, and Hill, as dominant a figure as he is, should take such a big chunk away from Waddle that who knows what you get. And of course, Hill was also signed immediately to a long-term thing. But Waddle, for me, before the Tyreek Hill trade, was clearly a guy who has a lot more to give than what he did as a rookie. And he was a monster as a rookie. It was just all very short. So there's more to his game. Does it manifest with Tyreek Hill there, a quarterback who's got sort of a suspect status, new coach? I don't know. But in terms of Dynasty, how much better can you do than Jaylen Waddle? He's super young. And if the Dolphins turn things over, if Tom Brady is the quarterback of the Dolphins next year, or Hill is such a presence that Waddle ends up somewhere else, bring it on. I mean, this is a great player who did great as a rookie, And there's still some potential for him to match that this year. It's just not, I don't think it's likely. But in terms of dynasty, I mean, I think he's somebody, we're talking about guys, Adam, that maybe somebody in your league is not crazy about. Somebody got a smash rookie year from Waddle, finished first or second, and now they're worried that Tyreek Hill is going to really be a big, obstacle to his production. Maybe that's a guy you can get.
Yeah, I mean, if I have Waddle, you can definitely get him from me because I don't think I have him at all. But that's a situation
where. Let me look.
That's right. But I don't. Waddle. But I think I can outside of myself. I think you can make the same argument that you made with DJ Moore for Waddle. It's probably going to be hard to get him. I mean, you hear guys like Theo Greminger talk about Waddle, and he's just, there's no way you're getting him from a guy like that. And that's generally how the feeling is around Waddle. And I would see, I like to hate, like, I just feel like I would take all the receivers around Waddle now and in the future. I know he's young and I know he's good, but I feel like he's the number 2. And as long as Hill's there, I feel like he's going to be the number 2. And there's just too many question marks of paths to greatness. I mean, last year he had like 140 targets last year or something. Like, I feel like he's no way he gets that with Tyreek Hill in town. So if Tyreek Hill plays 3-4 years there, he's not getting it. And who knows what the quarterback situation is going to be. I don't think it's going to be Tua. But are they able to get Brady? I mean, at that point, Brady's 48 or whatever. I just feel like there's too many question marks to get Waddle to being an alpha in an offense with a good quarterback. So if I had Waddle, I would gladly be looking at offers for him. But I agree. He's young and super talented. So those are two things that are generally good to bet on in Dynasty.
Yeah, we have a crop of receivers who meet that criteria. McLaurin has been this guy for a couple of years. DJ Moore, we've talked about. Is Waddle going to fall into that category where there's a great player there, but the circumstances are such that you don't really get the whole thing? I mean, he was over 1,000 yards as a rookie. He's somebody I'm interested in, but I'm not going to get him from you because you don't have him. All right.
That's right.
You're next.
The next guy I want to talk about was a guy that I know you love for this year, at least. His name's JuJu Smith-Schuster. And I just think when you have a 25-year-old receiver that was a top 3 overall dynasty pick like 2 years ago or something, leaving town to go play with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and Kelsey's 32 or whatever. Like, if he pops, if Smith-Schuster pops this year, I'm looking around at rankings and stuff. DraftSharks has him ranked 43rd. If that's where people are viewing him, I mean, buy, because even if you're wrong, you're not going to have to give up a lot for him if that's the way people view him, as the 43rd best receiver. And if you're right, I mean, buy. He could be a top 10 dynasty receiver next year, so being 25 years old, I just think it's a no brainer. And people should be absolutely be doing it. He didn't even sign like some crazy long deal, did he? Like
no,
like
1 year.
1 year. I mean, come on. He's going to be locked in to try to get that monster deal and prove to all his doubters wrong, because everyone thinks he's dust at 25 years old.
Yeah, I love this take. You said it up front. Like, I'm a fan. The Chiefs, I mean, everybody, it's the Kansas City Chiefs. Everybody has said everything about this offense. And what's the consensus? The consensus is we don't know how they see it. You have MVS, you have JuJu, you of course have Kelsey, you have Hardman, who there's an argument for. Like, Hardman really was kind of blocked by Tyreek Hill, and people talk like, he's unpopular with his team, but I'm not sure about that. I mean, he's had good moments for them and he's still there. And so, Sky Moore.
Don't forget my guy, Sky.
Right. That's not even the full list. And there's a good argument for all of it, for any of them to be the main target. Do you have to be the main wide receiver target in Kansas City to be productive? No. But the key point here is dynasty, and he's outside the wide receiver 3 crop on the rankings. Like, absolutely. He's got a great opportunity to put numbers up for Kansas City. And then, assuming he doesn't somehow develop a reputation that he may seem to have already, where I don't know, teams are not crazy about him, it seems, but that's what's gone on in his contract life the last couple of years, then he should be in a position to really cash in on a top season with, perhaps the best quarterback in the league. So for the dynasty price, 100%. In redraft, the point about the different arguments, the different guys, I mean, Smith-Schuster is the first one who gets picked. And so in an underdog situation or these redraft leagues, you might end up, I'm on Hardman a lot because he's just the cheapest of the four. Dynasty, I say go for it.
Yeah, I like him both. Like I said, I like him in both. And he's a guy, like, if he smashes and Mahomes trusts him and Mahomes likes him, I think they'll pay him. And then if he stays there, my goodness. Again, the sky's the limit. He's only 25. It's kind of a no-brainer.
So I want to talk about an obscure player here, someone else I would try to get in trades, and that's Christian McCaffrey. So not a lot of people know about him. We tried a couple of weeks ago on this show, or I tried to make a deal for McCaffrey and was unsuccessful. If I didn't update, I offered Najee Harris for him.
Oh, that's right.
On the Draft Sharks rankings, PPR, he comes in second behind Jonathan Taylor. There's an age difference there, but I mean, you've heard this a lot too, probably. I just don't think there's good logic behind the idea that McCaffrey's injury history means something useful to what's going to happen this year. I mean, it's not the kind of injuries where you smart people expect him to be sort of someone to bet against. And if you knew every player in the league were going to play every game, of course you would rank him first. In terms of dynasty, 26, I mean, it's younger than some of the guys out there that we argue about or talk down about because of age. Dalvin Cook, or of course, Derrick Henry are older. Barkley's not that far behind. So I'm not worried about age, and McCaffrey, as long as he's able to survive the season, which I don't at all want to rule out. You might have a league mate who has McCaffrey that's sort of frustrated. And I don't know if the time is right now to make that trade, but months ago when Adam was talking about he should be the 101 at the very beginning of the draft season, that might have been the time, but I'd still try.
Yeah, definitely. A guy that we talk about this sometimes. A guy whose body is not worn down. He doesn't have the carries and the touches because he hasn't played in 2 years. So, and I feel like too, like the league is just getting, the coaches and the GMs are getting younger and they're getting smarter. And I could see a situation in 2 years where they or a team turns him into a slot receiver. I mean, why can't he be Cole Beasley? You know what I mean? A situation where he's not taking these poundings, running in between the 20s, and maybe not like an actual slot receiver, but he's like a third down, a Danny Woodhead, a guy that strictly just catches passes, catches 90 passes, and extends his career to 2 or 3 years. Maybe he can play at least 31 because he's just strictly a receiving back. And so I think there's a little bit more longevity than people might think. He's obviously, so dynamic, and his points per touch are off the charts. His points per game. I mean, the guy hasn't had a game when he starts to finishes a game. He hasn't had a bad game in like 3 years. So it's like he's just so good. And yeah, I mean, running backs that are coming off injuries like that, a lot of times people might look at a deal and go, oh, maybe I will take this deal because I'm a little bit afraid that CMC might get hurt.
He's gettable. I think some of these guys we're maybe talking about or thinking about as trade targets, you just can't. Like Jamar Chase, how do you trade for Jamar Chase or even Taylor?
Right.
But McCaffrey, some are soured on McCaffrey. I do think it would have been easier months ago, like I said, but I think you want to look it up, see how the McCaffrey owner in your league is feeling.
And I don't think his value though is going to change between now and week 1, because I don't think I feel like I read somewhere like a month or two ago that he's not even going to see the field until week 1. Like I don't think he's even going to touch the ball, which is just what you want. So unless he pulls up lame during camp, I don't think he's going to play a preseason snap, and he shouldn't. That's what you want. You want him fresh. So I don't see like an injury, or I don't see them adding some player that's going to change his value. It's just maybe, maybe the team that's rostering him has an injury or two on their roster, and then it's like, okay, well, now I'm trading McCaffrey because I'm playing for next year. So I would test the waters now, but he could also be a guy that you could buy mid-season.
I'll slip my last one in here because it's pretty much what we've already been talking about in terms of the theme, but at quarterback, Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, like one entry for our discussion tonight, just older quarterbacks. This is more of a super flex point, but it doesn't have to be, where you have, depending on the status of the team that has these players, they might much prefer someone younger. And if you go to Dynasty rankings, you go to the Draft Sharks rankings and see Brady or see Rodgers in quarterbacks ranking, you're going to have interesting younger guys like a Justin Fields or even Mac Jones, depending on exactly where it falls, younger quarterbacks that the right team will want to move to. You don't want to be too crazy here because Fields could be 15 more years, or Mac Jones or Trevor Lawrence. They're not probably straight up, but Brady for this year, at the same time, these two guys both have challenges right now. You're talking about MVPs. Rodgers won the last two, but what's Green Bay in terms of the skill positions? And then Brady is down Godwin to start, and of course Gronkowski has retired, I guess. So they're closer, but you just don't, running back, quarterback, anything, you don't want to be afraid of trading for older players, because I think the overall sentiment in dynasty football is to be young.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And Rodgers is a guy, you just never know what Rodgers is thinking, right, when it comes to retirement. He just makes so much money. It's probably what it is. He's like, how do I turn down, $50 million a year? You're going to let me play a game for $50 million a year? You're not going to put any talent around me? Fine. I'm just going to keep cashing those checks. But I just never know with him. I mean, I feel like he keeps in shape enough and is good enough to play along, like much longer, kind of like Brady's doing. It's just, does he want to? But regardless of all that, yeah, if you want to trade for guys for like a 1 year, Superflex is a little bit harder. But I feel like in 1 QB leagues, that's why you can, if you don't go with that stud approach of just drafting that stud quarterback and not worrying about it for 10 years, if you're going the other way and kind of streaming them year to year, it's probably pretty easy to get guys like this for cheap, especially like mid-season, So yeah, those are two guys that, like you said, you can get them for less than what they're worth to your team if you need to trade for them.
I would rather have Brady than Rodgers for this year. And,
Yes.
dynasty wise, people have been predicting Brady's end for more than a decade, but he's quarterback 38 on the Draft Sharks rankings, right behind Drew Lock. Nobody's going to give you, Brady for Drew Lock, I think.
Right.
So somebody in a one quarterback league where he's a backup and you can get Brady for like a mid-round pick or something like that, he might be better than the guy you have for this year. So again, worth looking up. Got one more?
I do, and I could feel you rolling your eyes when I was sending this text to you, because I just know that we've talked about this person ad nauseum on the radio, on other.
Tell me who Gabe Davis is. I'm not familiar.
Who's he? I've never heard of Gabriel. I'm going to call him Gabriel Davis. Maybe that add a little flair to it. But I love the fact that like I get DMs about the Bills players, and we're like the Bills guys here on fantasy Twitter, and I love answering these questions, but I just feel like so DraftSharks has him ranked 42 in the Dynasty, and I looked at some other sites, and that's about where a lot of the sites have him, behind guys like, and you know how I feel about Sky Moore, but behind guys like unproven guys like Sky Moore and Jahan Dotson, and even like older guys like Amari Cooper, like stuff like that. And I just feel like this is a guy that's ranked 42nd or late 30s, early 40s. His ADP this year is like between 18 and 25 for this year. And I feel like in Dynasty, it should be even better. I'm not saying he's the 15th Dynasty receiver, but I feel like the gap there is way too big. And this is another guy that is playing for a contract, not this year. He's got a couple more years before he can get that contract, but he's playing for a contract. He's got everything in front of him. Josh Allen trusts him. We've gone on about this over and over again, but I just feel like he's a guy that if he has a great year, like a lot of people think he can, like he thinks he can, like the Bills think he can, he's going to skyrocket in ADP next year, 20 spots. So I think this is a guy you can get for fairly cheap. It's going to be harder now because again, everyone's so high on Gabe Davis, but he's a guy that you can get for cheap that could be a wide receiver 2 next year. Right now he's ranked as a wide receiver 4. Trade an ADP wide receiver 3 for him, and then hope he pops. And then he's a wide receiver 2, and you ended up gaining some big equity there.
Worth a gamble on a good, if not great team. I mean,
right.
The upside is so there, and maybe somebody in your league is a polarizing player is lukewarm. I think there's one thing that I'm going to regret this. There's one thing that is never said about Davis from that playoff game. So, somebody middling their position on Davis will tell you, well, he wasn't a great prospect, just generally. He wasn't a great prospect. The Bills didn't commit to him on the field, but that playoff game, right? Who goes for 8, 201, and 4 in a playoff game, and then, you don't want him on your fantasy team? It sounds ridiculous. I'm already upset that I'm saying it. I haven't even said it yet. So he went for 4 for 113 and 2 after 4 for 86 and 2 after the 2-minute warning of that game. Like the end of the game where one play could have just sort of eliminated all of that football and we've got kneel downs. That doesn't happen. And that's partly to Davis's credit, but a Chiefs secondary that was just sort of, a mess.
Yeah,
late
spinning.
In that game.
Tyrann Mathieu was out of that game too.
Right. 4 for 86 and 2 right at the end. So 4 for 113 and 2 is a great day. It's no record. And 1 for 75 for a touchdown earlier in that game. This was not a football game where Gabriel Davis was converting every 3rd and 5. This was not a game where, wow, they can't cover Davis. He really wasn't even a story until the 2-minute warning. And so that's obviously not, I'm not trying to take away from the performance. A record is a record, and he was such a big deal and a great player in that game, but it was not exactly like a Jerry Rice game, right? I mean, I think it's still reasonable to wonder what his upside is. I do expect the Bills to lean on him, and we'll see how that goes. I mean, they didn't want to do that last year. We know that. But now they're ready, and the offense is probably so good that you shouldn't really lose out in fantasy.
Yeah, and the thing is, the price you can get, or where he's kind of ranked now in Dynasty, all he has to be is a starting receiver on the Buffalo Bills, and to beat that. So, the floor is even higher than where he's being ranked. I don't even care about how good. In fact, the more we down, and I'm on team downplay everything so that we can elevate Josh Allen. Gabe Davis isn't good. That makes Josh Allen means he's even better. So I'm totally not vying for that Gabe Davis is the end all be all. I'm just saying that Josh Allen trusts him, and he trusts him in big spots, and that means a lot. Now, again, you don't get more points for getting catches in big spots, but that just goes to show you, he will throw to him if he wants to all the time. He was phenomenal in that Colts playoff game 2 years ago. I think this is his chance. I don't like that he's put on 10 pounds or whatever he's put on, 10 or 15 pounds of muscle, but I'm sure they know better than me, but yeah, I mean, I think the sky is the limit for him as far as being just a locked in wide receiver 2 for the next 4 to 5 years.
Well, that's why he's so interesting.
Yes.
I'm not ready to lock him in for much, but it's an exciting possibility. Cortland Sutton or Davis. Sutton's not even the right guy anymore because Wilson is there.
Right.
McLaurin. These guys come in a little bit above him in most rankings. Elijah Moore.
I mean, Kadarius Toney.
Kadarius Toney. Now that is sort of Gabe Davis on steroids here in terms of
Right,
drafts.
that's
I mean,
right.
because
That's right.
there's some gamble in that too. I think gambling, if that's the right word for it, I mean, is almost necessary to win in these. So you
Yeah.
have to take shots on talent, and sometimes, often, the players you're talking about, there are these sort of concerns about. So yeah, bring me Kadarius Toney for sure. First round pick.
Yeah. No, I get it. You have to, I'm not by them, but I mean, not by the regime that's there now, but yeah, no, I totally get it. I just don't see what the knock on Gabe Davis. Never, man, Gabe Davis stinks. You know, look at it. He's just terrible. It's he can't get on the field. And like I said, I just don't think the Bills knew what they had in him. He's only going into his third year. You know, they brought in Emmanuel Sanders, and they weren't about to bench Emmanuel Sanders for him. And then Sanders got banged up, and Gabe took over towards the end of the year, and I think it's his time. I think it's absolutely his time. And yeah, he's not going to be a wide receiver one, but he could be a consistent like top 20 receiver week in and week out, I think.
One more time, if you're drafting sometime soon, please check out the Draft Sharks Draft War Room, where you can play around with the projections like we've done a little bit of tonight. It's super nice. I mean, you see if you're watching us as opposed to listening, you see the boards and the look of the tools. It's really good. Become a Draft Sharks insider. Go to draftsharks.com and then let us know if you did that, because we'll be very proud and happy, and it's the weekend. We want to feel good. All right, back next week. 2 episodes, Tuesday for the high stakes crowd, Thursday for Dynasty. 1 week closer to drafts we're traveling to, and of course, eventually, believe it or not, NFL games. I know that sound. Let's leave it there. Mike Schob, Adam Crowhurst. See you next week on the Deep End.
See you guys.